Hey guys, in this video, I'll go over the Part 2 expenses part of the Schedule C. If you missed the introduction, don't forget to check out that video linked down below. But in this video, I'll go over each of the expenses line items as it applies to me as a freelance photographer. Also, don't forget to consult your tax professional before you submit any official tax filings. So with that, let's get into it. So finally, let's go ahead and get into Part 2 expenses. Back to the Schedule C, Part 2 expenses. The first line, line 8, is advertising. And the funny thing here is you go under Part 2 expenses and you see line 9, line 10, but where's line 8? There's no instructions for line 8 advertising. I looked at prior year products. I looked at 1040 instructions. I looked through all of these from 2018 all the way back to the earliest one that they listed, 1997. I looked through them all and they all said the same thing. There's no instructions for line 8 advertising. Just for fun, here is 1950 Schedule C. Look at that. It looks vintage. Look at the font. That's kind of funny. That's kind of cool. Anyway, so there's no instructions for advertising, and this is when I would go to Google. I would type in Schedule C, line 8, advertising instructions. And here you see the, here, this is something else, line 8 for a different section. And this is where I would start to dabble into some of the other blog posts. Like you'll see, these are not official IRS websites, but a lot of times, you'll find tax software sites, banking sites, they'll have some tips. Also, a lot of times you'll find other creatives like me who kind of talk about specifics of the photo industry and how it relates to taxes. But I did click on this one from the Balance SMB, whatever, small business. And here you'll see Jean Murray. I'll link this down below if you want a little bit more specifics. It says advertising. It's basically whatever you use to advertise your business. So if you do Facebook ads, YouTube ads, newspapers, TVs, more of the traditional, magazines, all of that stuff. Also included in advertisements specifically for the photo industry, your portfolio. If you print out a portfolio and you take it to, portfolio reviews and agencies and whatnot, the cost to make the portfolio itself, that's also considered advertising. Also, digital portfolios, your website. And I've also read that photo contests are also considered advertising. So if you apply to a photo contest, which seems to be becoming more and more outdated institution, if you apply to photo contests and you pay those fees to apply, that fee is considered advertising, and you would list it here under line 8. So yeah, under advertising for photographers specifically, websites, portfolios, Facebook ads that you might put out, marketing materials, your business card. If you have a publicity event, the expenses related to that would fall under advertising as well. You might have some wine and beverages and food. You might think this might fall under deductible meals, but this would be, if it's a publicity event for your business, then, the food costs don't fall under deductible meals. It would fall under advertising because the event itself relates to promoting your business. And so those things would fall under the advertising line. If you have any other situations that you might be wondering, just Google it, see if you can find it. Line 9, car and truck expenses. So this section is where if you use a vehicle for your business, if you drive around for your photo shoots and whatnot, or your video shoots, you can deduct your expenses related to driving. For me, I don't lease a car, I own my car, and I don't make any payments on it. So there's basically two ways to deduct car expenses. One is the standard mileage, and the other is the actual expenses. And so the standard mileage for this year, for 2019, is 58 cents a mile. So you keep a log of where you drive and how many miles you drive. And then you multiply those miles, the total miles you drove for your business, multiply it by 58 cents. And that's just kind of an easy way to calculate your car expenses. 58 cents a mile, that basically covers kind of the general wear and tear of your car. The car, you need to do oil changes, you need to change the tires out, you need to change the wipers or add fluids or whatever. All the maintenance stuff is covered under the 58 cents a mile. it also covers gas as well. And so if you have a fairly efficient car, you don't have some crazy gas burning car that is just unreliable, it might be a little bit more advantageous to take the standard mileage rate. But if you have a hoopty, if you have a car that breaks down constantly, take the actual car expenses. You can save all those receipts for the gas, the oil change, the breakdowns, the maintenance, the repairs. You would look how much in 2019, how much did you spend fixing and maintaining the car and putting gas in it? See how much that totals up to, and then compare that to 58 cents multiplied by how many miles you drove in 2019 and see what comes out better. And that might kind of lean you one way or the other. But the thing is, you can't flip-flop every year. You can't in 2019 do the standard mileage rate, and then 2020 you do the actual cost rate, and then in 2021 you go back to the standard. You can't flip-flop. You have to kind of choose one and then stick to that method. For me, for simplicity, and because my car is fairly efficient, I just use the standard mileage rate. I keep a log of the miles I drive and I just multiply by 58 cents. And here it says, if you're taking the standard mileage rate, add this to your parking and tolls. So parking fees and tolls is a separate cost. That is not covered under the 58 cents a mile. So that's a good thing. If you go somewhere and you have to pay for parking garage or whatever, when you pay tolls, that is not absorbed by the 58 cents. You can separate those costs out, save those receipts, and then total those up, and that becomes your car expenses. And then enter that total on line 9 right here. It says do not deduct depreciation, rent or lease payments, or your actual operating expenses. And that's for the standard mileage rate. Oh, and here you can see if you deduct actual expenses and you don't do the standard mileage, you could do the business portion of your gas, oil, repairs, insurance, your car insurance. That could add up to quite a bit. License plates, etc. All of these things is covered under the 58 cents if you decide to do the standard mileage rate. So this is where you would add up all of this cost for your 2019 year and see how that compares to the 58 cents a mile that you drove. And here it says if you own the car, you want to deduct the depreciation cost for owning that car. Put that on line 13, which is here. It says depreciation and section 179. Section 179 we'll get into later. And if you rent or lease a car, you would put that in under line 20, which is right here, 20A specifically. Rent or lease vehicles, machinery, or equipment, that would go under this. So that's where those go. And you can see here it says, for details, go check out Pub 463. And again, this is where I would just go to Google, type in Pub 463. And this talks about travel, entertainment, gift, and car expenses. And so you can kind of see this is how I've been researching on how to do my own taxes. So to summarize, for line 9, what I do is I keep a log of my mileage, how much I drive, and then I multiply that by 58 cents a mile. Also keep in mind, if you're using your personal car for your business, but you still also use it for personal reasons, this is where you would keep a very detailed log of this drive from this mile to this mile, I'm driving for personal reasons. This mile to this mile, I'm driving for charity reasons. Charity has a different rate of deduction, charity or volunteer. And then for business specific, if you go for a photo shoot, then you can't deduct all of those miles. You can only deduct the business or the partial for charity. So it's okay that you have a personal car and you don't have a business dedicated car. You can still use your personal car for business reasons and only deduct the business miles off of it. Line 10, commissions and fees. I don't really pay out commissions and fees, so I kind of skip over line 10. But I do have contract labor, the 1099s that I filed for all the people that I hire for my shoots, producers, assistants, directors, talent, all the contractors that I hire, that all gets entered into line 11. You can see it says enter the total cost of contract labor. And so they're all independent contractors. And here it says you have to file form 1099 miss or miscellaneous for all your contract labors. And that form where I send 1099s to my contractors, those forms are due to the IRS. That filing is due by the end of January 31st. And I covered that in my other video. Go ahead and click on the link down below. I covered how I filed those 1099s for my contractors. The total sum of that, all the forms that I filed into the IRS, I would put that in line 11 right here. Line 12, depletion. This doesn't apply to me. It says timber depletion, I guess, if you cut down trees or something. So I skip over that one. Okay, line 13, depreciation and section 179. So depreciation, as it covered earlier, I think under the car expenses, if you own your car and you want to write off the depreciation, that would go under this line as well. But the other part of line 13 is section 179. So section 179 is kind of a great thing for photographers and other small businesses as well. Definitely go dig into section 179. It says form 4562 and go ahead and read publication 946 to kind of go into the details. But just generally speaking, in my photo business, I have expenses that are kind of smaller things like, for example, paper or batteries or accessories like a remote. That would all kind of go under a different section, either under office expense or office supply. But there are some bigger things, for example, like a camera. These are bigger purchases and they also have a shelf life of years. Instead of writing this off under office expense, what you would do is for these bigger purchases is you would write it off under section 179. Section 179, it's a great thing for photographers and other small businesses. If you want to learn more about Section 179, and a very easy way to learn more is just go to Google, type in Section 179, and you'll see this link here, section179.org. And it kind of gives you a very easy way to understand what's going on. But basically, if you wanted to buy this camera and say it cost $1,000, just for an example, before you would have to depreciate this over a number of years. For example, say it has a useful life of 5 years, it cost $1,000. You could only write off $200 a year for 5 years until that $1,000 is depreciated. But with Section 179, it was introduced to kind of help boost the economy and give a little break to businesses by saying instead of writing this $200 a year for 5 years, you can write off the entire $1,000 in the year that you purchase it. So if I bought this camera in 2019 for $1,000, I can write off the entire $1,000 in the 2019 year. And that would reduce my tax liability by $1,000. So like I was saying before, for the smaller stuff, I would write it off under different categories here. But for the bigger stuff, for the bigger equipment, like cameras, lenses, things like that, I would write it off under Section 179. So the amount, I would put it on line 13 here. And then you have to list out on Form 4562. You have to list out 4562. That's where you would list out what the specific items or cameras or lenses or whatever equipment that you would be expensing. So here it says Section 179 expense deduction. That's when you attach a Form 4562. But the great thing about tax software, you just answer a bunch of questions and then it'll attach the right forms if it applies to you. And here, under line 13, if you scroll down, if you acquired depreciable property, see publication 946. Listed property generally includes but is not limited to, and here's something that might apply to us, any property used for entertainment or recreational purposes, such as photographic or video recording equipment. But there is an exception here where it says it does not include photographic equipment if it's used exclusively for your business. So for me, anything related to photo, because I have a photo business, for me, for tax purposes, for business purposes, there is no personal photo that I take. Every photo I take is either research, it's practice, it's actual business creation of photography. So for me, everything relates to my business. I don't have a full-time job and then I have a hobby as a photography that I'm trying to side hustle. This is my business. And so that's why all photography related purchases are an expense for me. Line 14, employee benefit programs. I don't have any employees, so I skip right over that. Line 15, insurance, other than health. And so here on the instructions, it says deduct any premiums paid for business insurance on line 15. So this for me would be business insurance, property insurance, liability insurance, things like that that relates to my business. Line 16, interest, mortgage or other. That doesn't apply to me for 2019, so skip right over that. If it applies to you, definitely read the instructions here. Line 17, legal and professional services. It says, include on this line fees charged by accountants and attorneys that are ordinary and necessary expenses related to your business, related to operating your business. So for me in 2019, I did not have to pay any of that, so I don't put anything there. But if you do, if you have an accountant, if you have a lawyer, this is where you would enter that information. Before this video gets too long, I'm going to end it there and we'll pick it up in the next video. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button and click subscribe if you want to see more videos on photography and the business of photography. Hope you stay safe. Till next time. See ya.